An oil well explosion at a GM property shattering the windows of homes as firefighters rush in to put out the flames. And that is where we start this afternoon. Thanks for joining us at noon. I'm Ty Steele. People in Milford had an alarming wake-up call this morning when an oil well at a GM property exploded. GM says a third party is the owner of that well. Shantae Passmore joining us live in Milford this afternoon, where homes are damaged from this blast. Shantae, what a scary situation for anyone involved, especially those homeowners.
Oh, absolutely. Not the way that anyone would want to start their morning, of course. We actually just got closer to the scene, and we have seen some fire engines pulling away from the area, but there is still a massive response at this hour. The blast so powerful, as you already mentioned, Ty. GM tells Local 4 it's aware of reports of potential property damage to homes nearby the oil well. This GM location is described as an automotive testing facility. However, again, the blast involves one of the oil wells located on the GM property, leased and operated by a third party. And there is, as I mentioned, a massive response. And part of that response, I just got off the phone with Eagle within the last hour. They mentioned that they have people out here on scene as well to offer any type of support as needed. And one of the things they'll be looking at is to see obviously the cause and whatever environmental impact. When we consider an explosion, the blast here from this morning, it is incredible to think that no one was injured, including any of the homeowners nearby as well, Ty.
Shantae, thanks for following up on that. And of course, we'll be following this on Click on Detroit all day long and back here on First at 4.
The Foreign Office is investigating reports that a former soldier fighting for Ukraine has been captured by Russian forces in the Kursk region. A video is circulating online which shows a man dressed in military uniform. Our correspondent Simon Jones reports.
In that video, he identifies himself as James Scott Rees Anderson. He says he's 22 years old, and he says that he was part of the British Army for 4 years before being sacked. He then applied to join the International Legion. Now, that's part of the Ukrainian army made up of foreigners. Now, he said he travelled to Poland to get himself to Ukraine. Now, tonight, we've had a report from the news agency TASS, the Russian news agency, saying what it calls a British mercenary has been captured in the Kursk region. Now, that's part of southern Russia. Now, there has been fierce fighting there after there was a surprise incursion into that region by Ukrainian forces back in August. Now, the Foreign Office have told us tonight that they are supporting the family of a British man following reports that he has been captured. The website of the Foreign Office warns against travel to Ukraine for fighting, saying people have been captured in the past, and when that happens, it can be difficult for the Foreign Office to offer support. So a worrying situation, but it could be even more complicated, but because this apparent capture happened on Russian soil rather than in Ukraine.
Dollar strengthening over the last several weeks, especially against the Japanese yen. Rebecca, this is something that you flagged to us. So you're watching the potential parity against the euro. We've been hearing more and more about that, too.
Yeah, so the euro is down about 4% against the dollar since the election, just around the election, which is a pretty big move in such a short period of time. And when I think about where it goes from here, you know, the market has removed some Fed cuts for the U.S. The Fed is looking for more rate cuts from the European central banks. So that rate differential, you could argue that's priced in. But if we get some of the policies from President-elect Trump, whether we're talking about the tax cuts, deporting immigrants, tariffs, all of those things are inflationary. So that could remove even more Fed cuts from expectations. So right now we have 3 between now and the end of next year. We could go to 1 or 0, depending on whether or not those policies lead to greater inflation and inflation expectations. So that's a biggie. Europe is just hard time getting out of first gear. Germany's going to have 2 years in a row of negative growth. So there's not a lot to pull capital into Europe right now. And then, of course, they're a lot closer, sadly, to the Ukraine-Russia situation. I'd say the one positive catalyst on my radar screen for the euro will be in Q1 next year. And that is we're going to have an election in Germany. And the potential new chancellor, Merz, is talking about a little less fiscal austerity, actually spending money in Germany, which would be a big deal. And that could be a catalyst given valuations. Well,
they don't call it that.
No. They call it less austerity. Come on, be more German. But if we don't get that, you know, I don't see a lot of bright lights anytime soon. So I do think parity is not a crazy thing to happen in the next few months.
Yeah. Okay, how about, I hope it's not an outlier, but if the Ukraine situation is resolved, I would think that would be a positive for Europe.
I would hope so. I think a lot is going to come around what does that peace or resolution look like? Are sanctions lifted? Is Germany allowed to start buying cheap Russian gas again? Or does it do a deal to avoid tariffs and it's buying more U.S. gas? I think there's a lot of questions around what that landscape looks like that tells me where we're going from here for Europe. There's going to be a lot of money that needs to be invested in Ukrainian reconstruction, too, which is good for Europe growth, but it's a big expense, and they don't have the money.
Dan channels his godfather to Alduro. I noticed something interesting.
Oh, yeah, I see what you did there. Yes, Michael down in Cuba.
Yen has been weakening at a pretty significant rate, while 10-year yield, like Japanese bond yields, are going higher. There's something amiss there, and I think market's not focused on it here, clearly. I think they're focused on it over there. Thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in Japan, the large corporations really want currency stability so they can plan their expenses, their investments. So when we get the gyrations that we've had this year in currency markets, it really slows down longer-term spending for Japanese companies. And that does eventually feed through into their earnings. So they want to avoid that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more intervention, verbal or actual intervention from Japan again in the coming months, just given the speed of this move. And obviously, Japan is very exposed to the United States. And if we do have a trade war, they're going to get caught in that crossfire.
Now, the India Meteorological Department has predicted that a deep depression will form over parts of Bay of Bengal and the adjoining East Equatorial Indian Ocean within the next 24 hours. And as per the IMD, the depression is moving towards Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu's coasts and could likely make landfall between Chennai and Puducherry. The agency has said that the depression moved northwestwards with a speed of 30 kilometers per hour during the past 3 hours. The IMD has noted that there is still variation among various models with respect to the intensification and landfall of the system. If the depression becomes a cyclone, it will be called Fengal. It would allow and follow Cyclone Dana, which was the third cyclonic storm and second severe cyclonic storm of the 2024 North Indian Ocean cyclone season. Now, correspondent Siddharth MP has a report on this.
According to the Indian Meteorological Department, the weather system that's been brewing in the Bay of Bengal of India's east coast has now intensified into a deep depression. Right now, this weather system is approximately 750 kilometers east-southeast of Chennai city. We have to keep in mind that as part of this weather system and advance warning, the Indian Meteorological Department has warned of heavy to very heavy rainfall in at least a dozen districts spread across Tamil Nadu. These are the central, southern and even the northern districts of Tamil Nadu. We must keep in mind that this is an evolving weather system. Over the last couple of days, it's been gradually intensifying. But what we must keep in mind is that through this week, rainfall is forecast for several parts of Tamil Nadu. In fact, a warning has specifically been issued for fishermen, asking them not to venture out into sea. This applies through the Tamil Nadu coast and Puducherry coast. This is a weather system that's being closely watched because, it was forecast almost 2 weeks ago and it was anticipated that it could bring heavy to very heavy rainfall to several parts of Tamil Nadu. Overall, speaking of the northeast monsoon, it's been reasonably active so far in the last couple of months. And this is the third major weather system to actually originate in the east coast during the northeast monsoon, which is ongoing and which is expected to continue at least for a month longer. From Chennai, Siddharth MP, we on.
Shalom, giving all praises and glory to our power Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua, Bahashem Rachak, with double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the whole elect of the tabernacles of David scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, and maybe you may be. Wherever you may be, shalom, Yeshua, shalom. Just a quick world news with commentary. I know it took a little time to get to this because there was a few videos, news clips before this, but I just wanted to briefly speak on this terrorist situation. I want to real quick read 2 Ezra chapter 6, starting at verse 20. These four on the screen. It says, and when the world that shall begin to vanish away shall be finished, then will I show these tokens. The book shall be opened before the firmament, and they shall see all together. And the children of a year old shall speak with their voices. The women with child shall bring forth untimely children of 3 or 4 months old, and they shall live and be raised up. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty, and the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man hear it, they shall be suddenly afraid. And that's basically what's slowly happening right now. The Lord is stirring up these politicians, even, beginning with President Trump, to start to maneuver in certain ways and do or say certain things, which Trump has not officially become president yet. And that's, of course, if he makes it. And we know if he does make it to the inauguration and officially becomes what the hell ever number, I don't know. I don't keep up with it. I really don't care. 40, is it 47? Something like that. 47 president, something like that, whatever. If he becomes the next Babylonian king, okay, these things that he's speaking on now beforehand, he is most definitely going to pursue. And so you get, which is not like this is the first time. It's been several news clips now for a short while, but him at these speeches, rallies, or whatever you want to call them, and he's speaking on these tariffs. All right, constantly speaking on these tariffs. He's going to raise, he's threatened to raise on China, and these people are standing behind him in the crowds or whatever. And little do these people know that these tariffs that he's threatening to raise, they have to pay these things. Okay, so he's threatened tariffs on China, and now here you have him threatening, supposedly, allegedly, the same tariff spikes on Canada and Mexico. And that really is going to be a very major crushing blow to the American people, man. Because once again, they don't understand that they have to pay these extra, we'll just say taxes for lack of better words, man. Okay. These extra amounts, percentages, numbers, or whatever. They'll have these American so-called tax-paying citizens. They have to use their own money to pay for these things, but they don't know that. So they're cheering him on at these speeches or rallies or whatever. And they don't know if he becomes president, he truly hits China like he says he's going to hit China with tariffs, and he hits Canada and Mexico the same way, man. Hey, that's going to crush Babylon. All right, the economy is slowly being dwindled here, and as the Lord says, as a matter of fact, we didn't have it. We may pull it up. I'm gonna read this real quick. 2nd Ezra 16:21. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. There's nothing for Esau to bring the prices down on a lot of things and spike them up. And one of those examples are gas. All right, but the Lord is in control of all these things, whether it be on the right hand side or the left hand side. But it's the Lord who is slowly, you see him putting that that slow pressure on Babylon the Great, man. And little do these people know, man, that if these things come to pass, man, if you think it's hard now already to keep gas or buy food or pay rent and make money at jobs or whatever, man, hey, once you start to have to go into these stores and majority of these goods always say made in China, but then there's other things that get imported from other places, but majority of these items come from China, and you have to pay this spiked up number, man, it's going to hit them hard. And then you talk about also hitting Mexico and Canada, man, what else is next? Okay, I was looking for Jeremiah 51. Here it is. Jeremiah 51 and 7. Behold, we'll just get them all on, since they're all on the screen. Behold, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, in Yahweh's hand, that made all the earth drunken. That's that wine of her fornication, his ways, his policies, his way of thinking, conflict resolution, acting, governing themselves, eating, and whatever even down to worship. All right. So it says, and made all the earth drunken. And just look at these nations, especially China. That's why China has a special mention in 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, as well as Jeremiah, I believe it's the 48th chapter. China, Moab has special mentions in those chapters, man, because it's the one nation on this planet that has most fashioned itself after America, Babylon the Great. And I mentioned it the other day when I was doing a lesson in the truck. Okay, and this Moabite chick was walking with this Edomite chick and this Edomite dude. He was kind of behind him. He wasn't, with the girl talk, I guess. He was kind of straggling behind, but I know he was with the Edomite chick. and this Moabite chick was walking with them. Now, if you couldn't actually see her, and you can analyze it for yourself. It happens all the time. Not all of them, but a lot of them. All right, if you couldn't actually see them, what they look like, and you just have to analyze the voice, you think it was two white chicks talking. Okay, but that's Moab for you, man. They are just like the Edomites, man. And so they have special mentions in 2 different chapters. All right, and it's all about destruction. Okay, Moab shall be my washpot. All right, it says, and they had made all the earth drunken of Babylon, right? The nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore, the nations are mad. And that's why the nations are rising up like, hey, hold on. This whore has gave me the claps. What's going on here? You told me you were clean. You lied to me. You lied to me. That's what happened, man. America has had all these nations drunk off power. Even though they have the power seat, these other nations have a certain level of power. It's not above or equal to what America has, but these nations have somewhat of a sovereignty. But we Israelites, hey, here we have no continuous city, but we seek one to come. Okay, so the Lord is taking note of all these things and watching, and there's a great judgment for these nations, especially Esau, Edom, and Babylon the Great. Give her a double, fill that cup to her double. That same cup that you made the nations drink of, the Lord's going to refill that cup for you to the double. All right. It says Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain. If so be, she may be healed. She may be healed. All right, this is very rhetorical, man, because the Lord is destroying this place. And little small moves like this that President-elect Trump keeps talking about. Okay, these lay more pressure on the American people, and they're so stupid they can't see it. All right. But this is the land of unwalled villages, man. They're unsuspecting, unassuming, and they only care about their everyday life. It only matters to them when they're feeling the effect. When someone else is hurting and down, or whatever the case may be, especially like the Israelites, for example, hey, it's okay as long as they're okay. But when it hits them, oh, then they want to boo-hoo all over the internet. Nah, man. Hey, the Lord's got some pain coming, okay? It says, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country. Those are the other nations, because you Israelites, there's nowhere that you could run to. There's nowhere that the nations can run for Jacob's trouble. So what more you Israelites, when he tells you that it's for to correct the house of Israel first. So there's no way you can run. All right. You can't flee to the islands. You can't flee up north somewhere to Canada. You can't flee to the southern countries. You can't flee back to the east countries. You will meet Jacob's trouble face on, head on. All right. He's talking about coming out of her ways. All right. What's that scripture in is that Micah 2:10, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. It is polluted, it shall destroy you with a sore destruction. Once again, mention that cup that's going to get filled to Babylon's double. You don't want to take part in it. Like that one movie, I forget what movie it was in. One of the movie was, I think it was Doctor Strange, and Thor was in the same movie. And Doctor Strange sat Thor down. He was like, you want some tea? He's like, I don't drink tea. He says, what do you drink? He says, not tea. And so he drank the damn beer, and then he set the cup down, and it filled back up. That's America's cup. All right. It will be filled to the double, and it will be nonstop, like it says in Psalms 75:8. All right. For you new listeners, if you haven't read that scripture, go and read that scripture. Pull that scripture up. Psalms 75:8, man. So it says, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. Yahweh hath brought forth our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of Yahweh, our power. And this is what we are waiting for. All right. And the Apostle Gabar and the other, brothers, I think it was the elder and Bishop Shakaran, just got off the live stream, and the Spirit jumped on Apostle Gabar to throw up a prayer, and I was doing it right along, all right, because I was actually there was no one around me this time, so I was able to join in and out loud, all right, and so I joined, Apostle, I joined in that prayer, okay, and I'm constantly at the end of my prayers, I'm always saying, wow, Baba Ba, God the Walla, okay, because that's what we're waiting for, man. We're waiting to see the destruction of this place, man, and we know we got to go through a troublesome time known as Jacob's trouble to see that destruction, but we are willing to play those roles, man, for righteousness' sake, all right, for the Lord's name's sake. But that's all I wanted to just jump into. I guess I got more verses than I expected, as usual. You know how the Spirit is. But yeah, man, just speaking on those tariffs, man. Right, that's a real crushing move if those things get rolled out, to spike up tariffs on Canada and spike up tariffs on Mexico, and then you're talking about already spiking up tariffs on China, because the American people have to pay those things, and the average American person doesn't know that. So that's it for my world news and commentary. I'm going to let you, enjoy the rest of the news and check out what's going on around the globe. Shalom.
Welcome back to the show. Let's take a look at the global headlines now. And China has responded today to US President-elect Donald Trump's threats to increase tariffs on the Asian superpower, saying no one wins in a trade war. Let's go live to Nine's US correspondent, Lauren Tomasi. Lauren, good morning to you. China wasn't the only country sending Donald Trump a message.
Certainly wasn't, Carl. Good morning to you. Both China and Mexico firing a warning shot at Donald Trump in response to the president-elect's promise of massive increases to tariffs on both of those countries and also to Canada. It's a move which Trump says will be in retaliation for illegal immigration and the crime and drugs, which he says are coming in over the border. Now, today, a spokesperson in China's Washington embassy has said that the idea that China is knowingly allowing fentanyl precursors into the US is completely counter to facts and reality, going on to say that no one will win a trade war. And while that was happening, over the border on the other side in Mexico, the country's new president there, Claudia Sheinbaum, has read aloud a letter which she has written to Donald Trump, reading this to press to say neither threats nor tariffs will solve the issue of migration or drug consumption in the United States. Imposing one tariff would mean another comes in response, continuing like this until we put shared companies at risk. So you've got there the threat to hit back with counter tariffs against the United States. But if you ask Donald Trump's former national security advisor, that's irrelevant to the president-elect, who is really determined to put in these tariffs.
When it comes down to it, I think he's very serious about imposing significant tariffs, and I don't think he fully understands the potential for reaction, retaliation. I think Trump is more determined to wage a trade war through tariffs than before.
And of course, with these tariffs and the threat of these tariffs, there is a flow-on effect. Yesterday, we saw the ASX slump and also the Aussie dollar was falling. So it seems that the world and the world's markets really are at the mercy of Donald Trump. Carl?
Lauren, thank you.
Transition is going on. In the meantime, the president-elect is weighing in on what's going to happen on January 20th. Just moments ago on a Truth Social, the president-elect wrote this. As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before. Right now, a caravan is coming from Mexico, composed of thousands of people, seems to be unstoppable in its quest to come through our currently open border. On January 20th, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all the illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. Both Mexico and Canada have the absolute right and power to easily solve this long simmering problem. We hereby demand that they use this power. Until such time they do, it is time for them to pay a very big price. He went on to add that he is also adding 10% to all products from China if they don't stop sending fentanyl and products, drug products, through Mexico. That is in addition to the tariffs already on China.
And for more on this, we have with us Peter Guznick, Professor of History and Director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University from Washington, D.C. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast. Let me begin by asking you, for your assessment of what's going on at this moment, what do you think is the message that Russia is trying to send out?
Russia has said that it's time to negotiate and end this fighting. The incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, has also said it's time to sit down and negotiate. So both sides are trying to establish and strengthen their positions before those talks begin. But it's not looking good for Ukraine. That overnight drone strikes were a record number, and they hit many critical infrastructure targets. On top of that, Russia is expanding in the east at the fastest rate since the beginning of the war. So on the battlefield, things are not looking good. And remember back that Kursk had invaded, that the Ukrainians had invaded the Kursk region in Russia. The Russians have taken back more than 40% of that territory already and are poised to take back the rest. So the sooner the fighting ends, the better for Russia, better for Ukraine, better for the rest of the world.
Sure, but what, according to you, is the likelihood of that really happening, and how fast do you see things evolving in the run-up to Donald Trump taking office in January? Because he, of course, has said that he can end the war in 24 hours.
Trump is very, very unpredictable. I never try to guess along with what Trump's going to do, but he has said repeatedly that he wants to end the war in Ukraine and do it as quickly as possible. Trump could stop the U.S. weapons flows to Ukraine, without which Ukraine will be helpless. So Trump can end it. He can end it quickly, but Putin is trying to end it on the battlefield even before that. Trump won't be in office for another couple months, so a lot can happen. And with this escalation, the world is very, very frightened by the prospect of escalation and of nuclear war. So these new missiles that Russia has launched against Ukraine, these Oreshnik missiles, are totally new and unprecedented. They're intermediate range ballistic missiles, but they're also hypersonic. And there is no missile defense that can stop them. So the Russians used it once in retaliation for the first ATACMS strikes. Since then, Ukraine has struck twice more with these ATACMS missiles that the United States gave them. And so the Russians say they're going to respond in a demonstrative way. And I anticipate that might be more of these Oreshnik missile attacks. But the Russians have already been destroying so much of the infrastructure. The winter is already setting in Ukraine. It's going to be a terrible winter for the Ukrainians without a lot of heat, without a lot of electricity. It's just going to be a disaster inside of Ukraine.
Peter Guznick, leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining here.
John Erath is a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation and former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Mr. Erath is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Erath, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. What is the outgoing president of the U.S. trying to do here? If at all the nukes deployment to Ukraine is true and it happens, what would be the detriment of that action?
To begin with, this is an absurdity. There is no serious discussion in Washington about transferring nuclear weapons to Ukraine or anywhere else. This is a rumor that started in the New York Times based on some very poorly informed people speculating that if Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, it should try to get them back. Mm-hmm. Well, when Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons in 1994, it transferred them to Russia, and I think that's the least likely place to want to give them back. So this whole discussion is absolutely absurd, and there is little point in having it now. All that this is serving to do is to further the Russian strategy of increasing the perception of nuclear threat in order to get Western governments to limit assistance to Ukraine.
Mm. Mr. Erath, let me ask you this. Several critics argue that President Joe Biden is trying to make it harder for incoming President Donald Trump, first okaying Ukraine to use the ATACMS, and now this report. Now that you've said it's a rumor, let's dispel that report. Let's talk about the ATACMS.
This is something that was under discussion for some time. It's probably a decision that should have been made 6 months earlier. For the reasons that the Biden administration did not want to increase tensions and increase the possibility of a nuclear response from Russia, they chose not to make the decision until rather late in the game. I cannot speculate. I don't work for the Biden administration, so I cannot speculate exactly what it was that prompted them to make the decision at this time. It could very well have been that the incoming Trump administration they wanted to make the decision instead of having the Trump people make it. It could be that they looked at what was going on the battlefield and decided this was a better time to do it. The decision to supply the ATACMS is something that will actually help the Trump administration in its efforts to negotiate an end to the war by providing more leverage. So it could be that as well.
Mr. Erath, finally, what do you think will be Putin's next action with the above developments and Britain throwing its spanner in the works by issuing sanctions to Russia?
Not just Britain. There was another set of sanctions on Russian financial entities in Washington this week as well. I think Putin will stick to his game plan that he has followed very carefully for over 2 years now, and continue to try to make threats to increase the possibility that the threat perception will be raised. And he will try to look for divisions in NATO countries and try to cause disagreement and dissent and limit the supply of assistance to Ukraine.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. I've been talking to Mr. John Erath. He is a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, and also a former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Mr. Erath, thank you for talking to us today.
You're very welcome.